Hello, my name is Crystal, and I interviewed Rick for my presentation. So Rick is a 24-year-old cisgender gay male. He is biracial, Hispanic, and Puebloan, and belongs to the Isleta del Sur tribe that speaks Tiwa. Rick is from a middle-class family and is currently living with his mother and grandmother. He was previously living with his father, grandmother, and half-sister until his maternal grandfather passed away. He completed 1 year of college after high school before he moved back home. He is currently working full-time as a phone customer service representative, and he does have some religious trauma as well as intergenerational trauma. So I started by asking Rick how he would describe his religious beliefs, spiritual path, or faith. And he explained that he would describe himself as Hopi, although some would say Pueblo. He said that there is a Hopi tribe that considers themselves like the true descendants, and they prefer other tribes not use the term Hopi, so that there's no confusion about being a part of the Hopi tribe as opposed to the Hopi religion. But Rick explained that the beliefs and faith are the same, so it's just a semantic difference. He then explained how he came to this place in his journey. So the reservation and tribe are officially Catholic because they were conquered by conquistadors and then forced into Catholicism by the Spanish after the Pueblo Revolt in 1680. So Rick was raised Catholic, which was fine when he was younger, but then he's experienced some dissonance between what he believed as a person and what he believed as a Catholic. So I asked Rick to expand on the dissonance within himself, his life, and others. And he explained that he experienced some religious trauma in the Catholic Church in his teen years when he came out. He was a youth leader for 2 student groups, and the adult sponsors asked him to step back and re-examine what his leadership meant. Rick started questioning himself and his religious and spiritual beliefs. He became very upset when we were talking because he said he wasn't in a relationship. He wasn't like going around dressed in rainbows or anything. So he started questioning if something was wrong with him and gradually left the church and the community. And he said that the separation was difficult because he left the support groups and friends that he had always known. I then asked him how much he allowed himself to question his faith, and if the questioning was helpful or possibly harmful, and how others reacted to this. He said that he went from Catholic to like a general Christian, believing in God, the Bible, Jesus as the Son of God, but then went further into like an agnostic stance. He said that, he was taught within the church, what to believe and what was wrong, and he blindly believed it. But then when he sat down, he started questioning it and, tried to wrap his head around why it was wrong. And he explained that the harmful part wasn't him questioning his faith, but others dictating to him what he should believe. He said the questioning led to him growing as an individual, and when it came to others, that he received silence, that others didn't want to talk about it, they didn't want to discuss it, and he said it wasn't necessarily hard to say goodbye to the church because there was no goodbye. I kind of feel like you can relate Rick's story to Jania's stages of faith, where he experienced religious trauma, he's not getting his spiritual needs met through Catholicism, and he's kind of in transitional faith stage where, he's examining things, he's feeling disconnected and doubtful, and kind of growing in this stage. And then he does seem to dive deeper and go into exploring his culture more and connecting to his culture more. And then and now he's still doing this. He connected more through language revitalization lessons with his uncle, pottery and weaving classes, which he feels brought him in touch with something he had lost as a kid. He knew the history of his tribe, but he wasn't really in touch with the culture of it. And so he explained that the spirituality and history are connected. and that when learning about pottery or art, that, where it comes from, that the spirituality part of it is connected to it. And so after a while, he started to feel his beliefs were closer. He started to feel that these beliefs were closer to his personal beliefs and a more accurate label for what he believed in. And so then he told me that also since the 1980s, tribal members have started reteaching the culture and the roots because so much has been forgotten. And he's very excited that linguistic archaeology and revitalization are now happening. I then asked him if he relies on teachings of religious or spiritual leaders. And he explained that it's kind of the opposite of Catholicism, and that Hopi have spiritual leaders, but they don't gather regularly in a communal setting where leaders teach you a lesson and then you go and you practice it. He said if spiritual leaders are asked for their opinion or what they think of a situation, they answer by saying, with my understanding of the world, this is what I think, but I encourage you to find your own answer. He also explained that Hopi religion is more of balancing your own sense of humanity and individuality with the sacredness of community and the environment. And that you must treat the environment with the same respect as a human being because we're the custodians of our environment. And, Kanda explained this well with the interdependence between the whole person, family, community, and the environment. Because Rick had mentioned losing his support and community when he left the Catholic Church, I asked him if he had found a new religious or spiritual community and if it was supportive and welcoming and if he felt he belonged now. And he said yes, that he does feel like he belongs more in the Hopi religion than in Catholicism. He explained that there's a shared understanding between tribes that no matter if their beliefs are different, they still trust them to respect each other. And he said it's very different from Catholics saying, well, my church teaches this, and so sometimes certain people will believe they're better than the other people. Kenda also mentioned this kind of when he stated that, one of the values in Indigenous beliefs is to respect all without imposing our own views. So that it does sound like that's what the tribes do. I then asked Rick how he gets his spiritual or religious needs met, and if he participates in any rituals or community events, traditions, ceremonies. And he said he feels closest to his community when serving it and helping specifically with the youth council or chaperoning the rabbit race, which is where the youth go out into the desert and, get to know it and the animals that live there. He also said out in the community and, tribal members just speaking to him and recognizing him and knowing who he is makes him feel, supported in the community. He did say that he does participate in the dancing season, which starts June 13th, the same as the St. Anthony Day in Catholicism. He said the tribal calendar was converted to the Catholic calendar. And that he believes the dance season coincides with the opening and closing of the harvest season. And when it opens, it's an all-day event, and it's mainly about the spiritual space where they keep the tribal drum. The drum is a metaphorical heartbeat of the tribe, and as long as the drum is alive, so is the tribe. And then the last day of the dancing season is December 28th, and its feast day is the Feast of the Innocents. So we talked a lot about that ceremony. I then asked Rick, what social workers should know about this group from his perspective. And he said to be receptive to more pagan beliefs. That in a more technical sense, his tribe is more pagan, even though they aren't traditional pagan. He said they could qualify as pagan, theologically speaking, being that they are polytheistic and not necessarily being in the Abrahamic religions. He then said that whether social workers believe the same things or not, as their indigenous clients, that being receptive to something beyond the big three, which is what he called it, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, is a huge step. He said it's important to realize that when you understand the faith, you understand the culture, and that the two are very difficult to separate from each other. He said when social workers are open and respectful to any Native tribe, who are more open to who they are as a people. And then in the Lakota Native People Spirituality reading, Maria Yellowhorse Braveheart stated that contrary to the popular myth that Natives are pagan, indigenous spiritual tenets are congruent with other religious traditions that assert the existence of one God or creator. Now, Rick actually stated his tribe is, in a sense, pagan, due to being polytheistic and not belonging to the Abrahamic religion. So I found that very interesting, and I feel it kind of shows how each person perceives things differently, and that, we must understand where our clients are coming from, what they believe, not just what we read about their religion or spirituality, and that we need to understand it from them, from their lived, from their religion, from their lived life. I also asked if Rick's spirituality or religion contributes to his ability to hope and grow. And he stated yes, that, that they believe that the legacy of a human is in the things and people that they leave behind. And so when a person passes on, the food they cooked, the house they built, the crops they grew, the art they made, all of those things are literal aspects of themselves that they're putting into those items. And so when they pass on, that death isn't the end. The original person doesn't leave. If the people who love them tell their stories and say their names, that it brings them back, that they're in the present with you. He then explained that they also believe that important elders, that a portion of their soul remains and becomes a kachina. And he explained this best as like a function of the world, like a manifestation of spiritual mechanic, like a thunderstorm. Then he talked about the corn maidens and how they're mothers whose children died, and once they pass, they watch over the crops and new tribes, and tribes like they're their new children. He said it's sad but hopeful at the same time. He also said that they believe that the souls go up and are returned to the sky, and disseminated and mixed in with other souls, and that new things are then brought about into being. He said it's not reincarnation, though. It's more like how seeds get pollinated and become new plants, but with like a legacy of the older plants. He says something ends and something begins, and that he does feel that he can grow now. He said that, Christianity believes if you follow specific rules, you'll get to heaven. But that Hopi believes you should wake up and do the best you can for as many people as you can because you want to. He said, there's room for a bad day. If he can't be his best self today, there's still tomorrow. And in Man's Search for Meaning, it stresses that the real meaning of life is found outside of yourself. Finding meaning in the real world or another person can lead to self-transcendence. And so Rick mentioned doing the best you can for as many people as you can because you want to. He also mentioned earlier that he meets his spiritual needs by serving his community. So, it sounds like in Man's Search for Meaning that the explanation is also valid for the Hopi kind of faith and how Rick feels. So Rick's next step in his religious or spiritual journey is to visit a religious site in the local state park called Waco Tanks. Waco meaning rainwater. There's huge boulders, an underground cavern. It's basically an oasis in the desert. And there's also pictographs from original pueblos and tribes that no longer exist. The water has formed a round room with round cubbies, and they see it as sacred. And they believe it's a channel or a doorway, and that water is life-giving. And so they perform like water rituals during thunderstorms, asking for guidance, and leaving things for their ancestors. The tribe is fighting with the state of Texas right now, though, because the state park rents it out and it gets trashed, and they feel very disrespected. But he does say that they can't show their anger because then the state turns around and says that they're childish and immature. So it's really hard for them to fight this fight.